June 17th, 2025. Well, the conflict in the Middle East continues, and then, of course, we had the tragic shooting of two representatives in the Minnesota legislature. Fortunately, that individual has been captured and is about to get the full extent of the law. And so these are the big events happening. And of course, we had the Not My King Day protests all over the country by a bunch of cuckoo Democrats that seem to be really deranged. And we had a really nice patriotic parade in honor of the 250th, sorry about that, 250th anniversary of the United States Army, which was a very well done thing. And of course, it's being ridiculed by the Democrats, but they missed the fact that the money was probably a very good investment in recruiting. After all, recruiting involves advertising and all sorts of things, and that probably was very effective. So, at any rate, those are the kind of topics I guess we have here. First, I think I'm going to go here into the ongoing situation in the Middle East, which has got a lot of attention. I noticed that certain people I watch on other topics have had some attitudes too. Essentially, what we've seen is an ongoing effort by the Iranians to do counter population attacks. I don't know that Israelis may be escalating in that direction too now, or we're counter-escalating because that was been the response to the attacks. There also been some pretty heavy attacks by the Israelis on the military infrastructure of Iran. So that's another development that's happening. I've seen some F-14s that go back to the 70s that were knocked out. And so kind of sad to see the old planes blown up, but I guess it's got to be. Huh? And what's still up in the air, I guess, is the degree to which the Iranian nuclear program has been adequately destroyed, and then there's a lot of debates about what the U.S. should or shouldn't do about it, and maybe what it is doing and isn't doing about it. So that's all creating. The various factions are having their opinions on that subject. So let's look in. I think the big thing is to see how well the so-called Cordo enrichment plant that the Iranians have built into the side of a mountain that's underground and very hard to get to, and the discussion about whether or not the U.S. needs to get involved to attack that, or can it be handled by the Israelis, or could it even be handled by diplomacy? Those are the kind of the options we see on that. So, but if you like this video, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Or you can also follow me on Rumble if you're on that one too, and don't have a YouTube account. So anyhow, I guess I'm one of the things is that the information we're getting about it, because we're not getting classified reports here. I've heard two different people on TV saying two different things, and I have no idea which is the truth. One says that it's about 300 feet underground, and the other one says, no, it's like half a mile underground. Well, of course, maybe well, that's a big difference, okay? I mean, I think if it's a half a mile underground, I have my doubts that the massive ordnance penetrator, I think that's what, GBU 57, I think it is. I think there's two variants of that. They're descriptive. They can be delivered by the B-2 bomber primarily, and certainly going into hostile airspace, I was sure he would use that one for that. And there's a lot of discussion about that. I believe the other issue, of course, is the Israelis have the ability to deliver the GBU 72, which is our most advanced 5,000-pound class penetrator bomb. And my thought is, if it's only 300 feet underground, I think they might be able to get it by multiple strikes using that, or by clever tactics of targeting the entrances to the access points of this thing. I mean, if there's an actual big opening to it, a big heavy bomb like that might slide in there and go down the tunnel a ways and then detonate with delayed action and do the job without having to necessarily penetrate 300 feet through rock or whatever, That's the other aspect. What kind of material is it? If it's hard rock, I mean, that's a whole different issue. Burying the thing underground is another issue. But of course, if you could get a diplomatic solution and get the Iranians to agree to a disarmament treaty where that they would agree to, dismantle all this infrastructure and obtain any uranium they might need for reactors if they're really going to be running reactors. I don't even know if that's good from our point of view either, by the way. I have my own attitudes on that subject, which I've often differed with other people over the years on it. That is to say, while we're looking at uranium, what if they're actually also pursuing a plutonium path? So, anyhow, but that's not been what's been mostly discussed, as we well know. And anyhow, so that's kind of it. That if you're a diplomatic solution with on-site inspections and the elimination of the national, the Iranian's national enrichment facilities would be the best possible guarantee. Because even if you blow up everything successfully with bombing, and then the conflict ends with the current government still in place, what's to prevent them at some time later to go back in this business again, and this whole thing would have to start over, And by that time, presumably, they would have acquired additional air defenses and weapons from either China or Russia or both in order to, and set the whole thing up for another future operation. Obviously, this time around, I think the one thing they have to realize is they have a lot of traitors within their own country. Oh, excuse me. Those are freedom fighters. I'm sorry. But however you want to look at them, my point is there's a lot of indigenous people inside Iran that don't like the government and are willing to work with the Israelis, the Americans, or anybody else, I think, that would help bring it down. And maybe that's a good idea. But I'm saying that the regime itself has to realize that they've done a pretty poor internal security job, I think. Considering what happened to them in the initial day of the attack. I mean, similar to actually kind of worse than what's happened to the Russians when you think about it. The Ukrainians are doing this hit and miss up there, but they're not doing it that thoroughly and that systematically. So anyhow, so that's kind of that. I mean, as to whether we get involved, the other thing that was sort of scary to me is two things about it. Not so much the chatter I hear on TV all the time. I don't think the big problem is, quote, a war like Iraq, with ground troops and. I don't think that's at all what would happen, what the problem would be. The problem, I think, would be, we might fly in with our plane and drop our massive ordnance penetrator. What if it doesn't work? That would be kind of humiliating, right? Remember, and so then the other point is if this whole thing expands and the oil flow from the Persian Gulf is significantly disrupted, that's kind of a dramatic economic effect, and that won't be good for our economy and for our political future. Because in my opinion, the future of the country being is keeping the Democrats out of power for as long as possible until maybe that faction of the public calms down a little bit and gets a little bit less radical. Because for the moment, getting in their current radical state would be a big disaster, in my opinion. So those are the things I'm looking at. That certainly the Iranians can do more damage to the Saudis and the Emirates and so forth with various things. They've only fired, as of this recording, I only know of 370 of their missiles. Now, it may have been another volley since the last time I got to see the news, and it seems like as they go forward, there will be more attacks. For people who are counting, I don't know what the results of the last 170 missiles, but from what I've heard, the first 200 missiles, there were 17 that actually impacted, doing damage to various facilities in Israel, and so that would be an interception rate of about 91.5%. Yes, that would be right. And so anyhow, and so then you have that, and. So that's a pretty effective system. These systems are not foolproof. I don't know what impact that'll have on the prospects of the Golden Dome, because remember, the Golden Dome is designed against nuclear attacks, not conventional attacks. And if one of those gets through, you have a horrendous amount of damage. So at any rate, but that's something to consider. The other thing that, so that's But I don't know what happened on the last one. I know the later strikes apparently did hit an Israeli oil refinery, and of course that may very well lead to Israeli attacks on the oil facilities of Iran, and that would be affecting. And if they then retaliate against Saudi Arabia or the Emirates Gulf, you can see how that could be a fairly disastrous thing. So, in other words, a ground war in a traditional sense isn't what I'm primarily concerned about at this point, but it would be the damage to the world's energy infrastructure in general. So, and of course, the Chinese are not going to be too happy even if the Iranian stuff gets blown up. Well, that leads to a lot of other issues about the ongoing war in Ukraine, which I'm not going to get in detail here, but that is impacted. Already, the price of oil in the world market have gone up over $70 a barrel as of this time, and if strikes on oil continue, that would go higher. I think a little easing on the Monday, but you're going to have ongoing risks. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're looking at on that subject. And the other question in my mind is, if the Israelis were to strike at, exactly how would they go there? Because a lot of those facilities are further to the south. The one thing they did hit was some fuel storage areas around Tehran. But if you go further, you don't want to go through Saudi Arabian territory. Maybe that's why the U.S. is bringing in-flight refueling aircraft into the European area. Maybe the plan is to actually provide in-flight refueling for the Israelis, which would then perhaps allow them to strike at some of those facilities. I can't imagine we really want them to do that, though, because of the effect on the world economic situation. So, anyway, that's kind of the rundown on the conflict as I see it. It looks like their air defense is performing pretty well. One of the things I thought was interesting, I do watch the other side of the coin on the Judge Napolitano show, where the shirt was saying that Iran has was it 40,000 missiles? I guess they mean missiles that could reach Israel. And I'm like, whereas the Fox expert General Keane says about 2,000. There's a big gap between 2,000 and 40,000. If they were to have maybe 4,000 rather than 2,000, that would seem credible, but somebody is really off on that one. And so, but hopefully this can get wrapped up here maybe with some diplomacy. I think that's what President Trump would like to do, although he left the G7 summit early and have a National Security Council meeting, so it's hard to know what direction he's going to go on there or what developments maybe he's concerned about he needs to counter in some way. I mean, also, there's a possibility that Israel could attack the oil facilities of Iran in the southern region with cruise missiles launched from their submarines, potentially. So that's another angle on that subject, or a drone, maybe. I mean, they have some long-range drones that might be able to get down there. Might be fuel efficient enough. So these are all. This is kind of the state of play at the moment. We can kind of hope we can bring it to a close successfully without it escalating to a disastrous level. So far, the Iranians have refrained from attacking American forces in the area. And even though we're bringing in more ships, aircraft carrier, Nimitz, and so forth to beef up our capability, but we can just kind of hope that don't happen. And we can bring this to a successful conclusion, hopefully some diplomacy. But the other aspect I should mention is the thought that this whole shock might bring down the credibility of the Iranian regime and lead to a breakout of another color revolution or something. Although I don't know if anybody's prepared to launch one of those or not. I mean, but if the people, revolt against the government, and with the Revolutionary Guard force being somewhat weakened, it's possible that might be more successful than it was in 2009. So that's kind of my summary for the moment on the situation. Of course, it's a fast developing situation, and we'll just have to stay tuned in. I'll continue to make updates on various topics on X, as always, and my other social media accounts, and I'll Of course, be posting this on YouTube and Rumble as always, so all for this time.